Hello and welcome back to the Sell Like You podcast with me, Harriet Mellor. Now, today I'm going to start our episode by sharing with you a win and a loss. Okay, I feel like we talk so much about how to win and what's going to happen and how to overcome these objections that we forget to talk about the things that when it just feels a bit rubbish, when something doesn't quite go our way. And I'm going to share with you how I overcome that, how I handle that, and honestly, how I feel about it. So my win for the week is that we have a new salesperson. He is starting with us in 2 days. So the onboarding is already scheduled. It's part of what we offer as the service. So our onboarding is probably the easiest part for me. And we have the Tech Sales Accelerator, so he'll be going straight onto that. And then we run mini tasks throughout the first week. And that's really just to test knowledge, to test theory. And then we then get him then onto our systems and then into our technology and into our tools before we then get going. Now, my rule of thumb with that is that I don't want them to wait too long before getting on the phone. The phone's the scariest bit with any organization, especially when you're new to the industry or if you're new to that business or to that organization. So we want to get that as quickly as possible. So usually we see our onboarding process to be about 5 to 7 days. And then we then continue the learning and development as we go through. Now, he's part of our new offering, which is lead development as a service. It's not available right now. We are taking waitlist or expressions of interest because it's something we just want to really make sure we've got all the systems and processes right. So we've got a new client that's utilizing us as part of a pilot, and I will share more on this platform for sure. I share everything, all the ins and outs of what we're doing. Now, a loss I'm going to share with you. So we bidded for a sales partnership. It was for a cybersecurity organization. They were looking to develop their team beyond what it is. They've got a fairly new sales manager and they were looking to develop that. So I went in, had a conversation with the CEO, positioned a few options. They came back, they were looking at a methodology focus around MedPick, and they've ended up going with somebody that specializes in MedPick. They gave me the feedback in terms of why they chose that person over me, and that was great. Made my notes, attached my activities, and we move on. Now, what I find really interesting is that I've never taken a loss to heart. Now I'm going to say apart from once, but I'm going to explain the once in a minute. But I've never ever taken a loss to heart because for me, it's not about me. It's not because they didn't like me. Maybe some people don't. That's fine. I'm sure some people don't, but that's okay. That's up to them. That doesn't impact me at all. When I don't know why we weren't chosen or when I don't know, who else we were up against, I knew we were up against two. I knew we were one of the last people in because I'd done outreach. So I knew all of these steps. I then went through and got feedback I hadn't heard for another week. I know they were on leave. And then when I then called back, the CEO took my call straight away and gave me feedback. So for me, that was a win in my eyes, if I'm allowed to say that, as a salesperson. But for me, it was a win because I already knew that there was a chance we may not win it because of these reasons, because we don't specialize in one specific sales methodology. The reason we don't do that is so many businesses use so many. And essentially, a sales methodology is a checklist. So we can apply all of our learnings and tools into every single sales methodology. We've got a podcast recording coming soon of that, if it's not out already when you're listening to this. And that's because there are so many out there. I have done pretty much all of them. And there's not much that changes. It's just to do with the process and then the checking list of information, essentially, to really dumb it down. Sorry for anybody out there that's screaming at me right now. So that's my view of it. So my loss was that we didn't win. But my win within that loss is that I've gathered more intel. Now know another person out there that I didn't know before that offers, specific services around that sales methodology. And I've continued my relationship. When I'm over in Sydney, I will be sure to catch up with the team and reconnect with them there. So for me, there's actually only really 2 wins, but we're going to share the loss as well. Now, I did say I'd never take them to heart apart from once. The once was that I got a phone call many, many years ago. I actually cried when I got this feedback was that I was told it was coming. I'd done all my due diligence. I'd understood every component. I'd sold to them before. I understood all the decision makers. I understood who else they were comparing. And they contacted me to say they were buying us the same solution that I'd proposed, that I designed from somebody else. And I questioned why. they said they were cheaper than me. So same solution, same technology, cheaper. Now, in the world of tech and channel-led sales, there would be very little chance that they would have actually been cheaper than me. Because when you work with a vendor hand in hand and you do your deal registration, you get your margin protection, you get your percentage from your distributor, and then you prepare the quote. So I was very confident in price. We had at the time one of the best solutions architects. He designed everything to the nth degree. We'd been through it multiple times. We'd had everything included that they needed, wanted, and understood why we had included everything in there. When it then came down to the decision, they went with somebody else. Now, I had been told only a few days prior by that customer that they were going with me. So I'd put, my 100% on the board. I was ready to go. I'm just waiting for this signed contract. So every day following that, I'm waiting for this contract. My sales manager's like, where's the contract? Where's the contract? Where's the contract? So then when I get a phone call to then say I've lost it, I'm like, hang on, how did I lose it? You're my existing customer. I've done a really good job of this process. I've understood every single element within the sales process. There's nothing I've missed. I even went back and double checked, and now I'm being told I've lost it due to price. So had a little cry, had a moment, and then I gathered my thoughts. And then I asked the customer, because he was my customer, to send me the detailed or the breakdown of the technology of the stack that had been designed that they'd gone with. So we got that through. We looked at it with the solutions architect, and we looked that it was not the same solution. And the reason how they'd been able to get it lower was that they had not included elements that we knew the customer wanted, and they'd expressed that it needed to be that. And then they'd provided lower grade components within the infrastructure stack. So once I'd found that out, I went back to the customer. I explained how they were cheaper, because that also doesn't look great on me. I explained how they were cheaper. And then I highlighted the 3 or 4 key areas where they had not provided the same level of technology I remember it was one of the keys, just so long ago. I remember it was one of the key areas around the supporting element. So it was 5 years support. They've done 3 years as an example. I think actually in theirs they've done 12 months. And so there was really key things as to how they could have got it so much cheaper, but they hadn't adhered to what they actually wanted. So after I did that, obviously at that point I think I've lost, but at least I can give him some idea in terms of how and why. He comes back, he cancels the purchase order to them and gives me the purchase order. So my loss turned into a win because I wanted to understand how I had lost it. And so although this episode is not about winning and losing and how we recover from both, maybe it should be, that gave me the insight. And then I went and did my own due diligence because I wanted to learn from that mistake, because I'd obviously made some form of mistake because there was nothing else I could find in the process. And then I went back, I explained the differences, not with a goal necessarily to take the deal back, because I kind of already thought it'd been done. However, they then cancelled that because they weren't adhering to the requirements of the customer. And I continued supporting that customer across multiple different technologies for the remaining 4 years of that relationship until I moved on. So that's an example there in terms of how we can switch them around, sharing my win and loss for the week, but also then the fact that whenever we do lose, yes, we should be learning, but also remember that we don't want to take it to heart. It's not personal. If you do let it be personal, you'll wallow in it for the week, your sales numbers will go down, and then next week it's just going to be a slog to get back up again. Okay, so positivity, look at the wins, look at the things we can learn from our losses or areas that maybe we've not quite done enough. And you'll just keep improving every call, every day, every week, every month. Now, today's episode is about bridging the gap between tech and salons. Now, if you've been here for a little while, you will know, or you may have heard, that my first business was actually a day spa in Australia. I was working in tech full time. I'd found this bottle shop. It was basically a big fridge. And we decided to open a day spa. It was something that I'd been toying with. I just found when I moved to Australia, there weren't anywhere that had these luxury, places to go for amazing facials and treatments. It was a lot of medical grade, facials. And then the massages were always in the shopping centers and it was noisy. And so I thought, I've been learning more about business, did this little mini kind of, 7-week course. I'd met some people. I'm a real reader. I'm sure you've probably got that from everything I share around books. But I love to learn, and then I love to apply my theories. I decided to take this on. I had a friend. Well, she I wouldn't class her as a friend at the time, but I was her client, and she was doing treatments from home. And I asked her if she wanted to run the salon side. And she said, no, I want to do it with you. So we went into business together. We took on this bottle shop and we turned it into a full treatment room. We had pedicure stands, we had manicure stands, we had a beautiful waiting area, and we were opposite the beach. So that was what we decided to do. And something that I still find fascinating today is that tech and beauty just feel so far apart. If I go into a beauty salon and I start talking about cybersecurity, they're just going to wash over. Same thing happens if I talk to cybersecurity people about different, techniques or words or specialist information around the beauty world. They're not going to necessarily understand. And that's really the core of any form of sales, is understanding what you're selling, but then how do you translate that into somebody's language? But I want to share some of the common themes or the gap and how we're bridging that between tech and salon, because a lot of the same core principles apply. And so when we look at the unique aspects of working in the beauty industry or working in the technology industry, is that we have to understand the customer's needs. That is a universal principle in sales. We have to understand their needs. We have to understand their problems, their challenges, what they're trying to achieve, and then how we can help them to do that. Now, whether it is in tech or in salons, we need to know that the customer is in for the right reason and they have explained the outcomes. And then our job is to attach the solution, the journey, this product, the service into doing that. And so I've just recently been running a workshop for L'Oreal across their salons in Australia. And I find it very interesting doing an introduction because I teach people how to sell tech. And then they're like, why is she here? And then I then give, the story in terms of the salon experience and what I'd done previously, and share some of the commonalities. And often it is the fact that we're people to people. So people buy from people, people trust people. And the goal with any sales role is that we are there to build trust with the people that we're selling to. And the ideal outcome is that when we have built enough trust, they will buy everything that we recommend because they trust us. Now, I had a client who was one of my first clients actually in Australia. And I remember doing a fit out for one of his locations. And I said to him, right, we've got 2 firewall options. And essentially he looks at the price because he's not technical. And he goes, well, one of them's 10 grand, the other one's 23 grand. Do I really need the 23 grand one? And so all I do is I just explain it into terms that mean something to him. So I look at, okay, well, this one will last you longer. So essentially that will cost you this much over 5 years. This one will cost you this much over 5 years. But not only that, here's your limitations. If you grow beyond this, if you take on another location, you're going to have to buy a second one of those, potentially a third one. And then this then is what the overall cost is going to be. So I know for him, it's about cost and it's about having to do things multiple times. Now, the trust element comes in is that when I tell him to buy the 23 grand one versus the 10 grand one, he trusts me and he goes ahead with it. He signs it off, doesn't ask any more questions. When we relate that back to salons, whether it's beauty, whether it's hair, whether it's nails, whether it's eyebrows, is that we want to work with people. We want to engage with our clients that trust us, but the trust needs to come from education, from coming in and having, those repeat treatments, because then they then say, well, that was amazing. Like that person is amazing. If I think about my hairdresser, I love Jake. And I actually found him through a networking event, and he spoke about setting up his business. And now that's where I go, and whatever he uses on my hair, I'm like, yeah, give me that. I'll buy that. Do you reckon I should use that? And he relates it all the time back to me. He relates it back to my hair type, how I style my hair, how often I wash my hair, and my pain points with my hair. And so, yes, we are still on a tech podcast, but when we then relate that then back to technology, is that often we're going in and we're selling one technology, And then we're leaving. If you work for a vendor, if you've only got one product, one service, or maybe multiple products, but same kind of environment, then often we go and we sell that, we leave again. But there's no repeat kind of touch points of checking in and how are they, and pulling off a report and giving them an update and bring them along to the next webinar. Because for them, they're like, well, we're done. I've got nothing more to sell them for the next 3 years. Or when you've got something to sell them, you then reach out. But we need to find touch points to get them back in. The beauty of salons is that often people are coming in every 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks to have something done. So the repeatability is there. But if they have a poor experience, almost even just once, chances are they'll never come back. And then they'll tell 10 people. Same thing with technology is that we have to find the reasons to get in there every 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks. And then if we then get to the end of that 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, and we haven't done enough in that time to support them and to add value, when it comes to our renewal, it's going to be really difficult. Or they will have already made the decision because you've called them a month before. Someone else has been in there 3 months, 4 months, 5 months before, feeding them education, feeding them examples, outcomes, use cases, nurturing that relationship so that when the time comes, they're in and they've got an opportunity, but you're nowhere to be seen. And so there's so many similarities across so many different types of sales, but the beauty is, and the beauty, I keep using that word, the beauty is for me, is I have loved seeing small business sales and then large enterprise global sales, because we can learn so much from both. And even for me, as building a small business in the early days, we were leveraging a lot of social media. We were leveraging a lot of, workshops and masterminds. And that was great for us because the biggest challenge clients are the ones that don't have a sales team, or the ones that are about to hire their first salesperson. They need everything to go well. Whereas when I work with other organizations that have got 12, 15, 20 salespeople, they're okay if one person isn't quite performing because everybody else is holding them up. In a salon, the chances are they've only got 3, 4, 6 people delivering, their services. And so if one's falling down, you've got one-to-one on the customer element, they're out. And so for us, when we built that business, I sold the business now nearly 3 years ago. But when we built that business up to what it was that we found that we just got to understand our clients. We got to understand who we're speaking to, what it is that they actually want, and then how to deliver on our promises, how to deliver, improved services, different services. And it's all about listening to our customer. And I think one of the key things for us in that business was that Claire, who I ran the business with, had been in sales for many years. She was in travel sales. She'd been in beauty sales. She'd run her own home business in beauty. And so we could, the business could tell, the numbers could tell when Claire and I were in the salon versus when we weren't, because we were in there and we were on the front desk. Whereas our team are in the rooms. And then when we were able to then translate and then share, and then they were willing to give that a go, they then started seeing their numbers grow. And then they started seeing their commission grow. And then from that, our salon grew. We were runner-up for the WA Spa of the Year, and we went to Sydney for the awards. And that was within our first 12 months. And that was because we just really cared. We just wanted to do well. We worked really hard, and we listened and we engaged with the community. And every time somebody's coming in, we're adding more notes. We're learning about them all the time, so that then when they come back in, we can add more value to them. So one of the key things I want to share with you today is called a day sheet in the beauty world. And we can relate it back to our sales planner in our sales world. And in the show notes, I will share with you a sales daily planner template, which you can use. You can use it electronically. You can print it off. You can write in it. We will also be getting these printed. So if you do want one of those, make sure you're connected with us. Drop me a note and say, I want one of the printed versions. And as soon as they become available, I will let you know and I will send you one for free. So the day sheet in a salon is imperative because they've got appointments throughout the day. So their appointments are, so a day sheet is an overview of all of the appointments that have been scheduled per therapist. Okay. So in the morning, the system will allow you to pull off your day sheet. I guess it's similar to if you were pulling off a calendar and you went onto the day for the calendar, you print that off and it comes off in one page, and then you've got then all of your appointments. So I'll come back to kind of how it relates to tech, but essentially that's what we're talking about. So we go in, we pull off our day sheet. Now, on our day sheet, we'll have the therapist's name at the top. It will have the treatment and the length of treatment, and then any notes to do with that treatment relating to that customer. It will also give an overview of any of the last notes that have been added. So you've got that for reference. Now you can have that, so it just gives you a run sheet, and sometimes it's 1, 2, 3 pages, especially if it's a Saturday, and you're going to see more pages in there. And so what happens then is that each therapist gets it in the morning. They go through and they look through the client profile. They look at past appointments. They look at notes. They look at past purchases. And that is a moment for them to look into what products, what services, and therefore opportunities for upsell today. Okay, in that day. We're not looking tomorrow, we're not looking next week, we're looking for that day only. So it's going to be fresh in their minds, and they're going to think about it when they go into that treatment. So for example, if one of our therapists had seen that there was a product that they purchased 6, 7 weeks ago, and we know usually they buy it every 8 weeks. So that would be my first, star would then be, ask where they're at with this product. Okay. It could be that they've switched products. Great thing to know. It could be that they do need it. Great. We're going to be able to sell them that product. Is there anything additional that they haven't tried? Did they take a tester last time? Ask them how that went. Would they like to bundle that in? If they buy 3 products, is it 20% off? Whatever the thing is, be prepared with that offer and with why. Okay. So if you've bought something, I know you prefer to buy it every 8 weeks. I'm going to add that in for you. When we look then at the treatment times, we can also look to find gaps. So the other thing that we would do in that scenario is that we would then go through and you could text the person coming in if it's later on to advise them that we've got a gap for an extra 20 minutes if they would like to add on a head massage, a foot massage, a face mask, an eye mask, whatever it may be. You can preempt that, and then they're like, oh yeah, I could do with that. Hair salons are a great example because everyone loves getting their hair massaged, or their head massage. So that would always be a real top seller. So then at that point, we've now got our day plan for each person that's coming in, what treatment they're in, what products they've purchased, any upsell on the treatments, or anything for them to take home at the end of the day. Now, what we used to focus on was that every week or every month, we would have a product of the week or of the month. And what we would do is that we'd have that on the front desk and we'd have tester pots. And so we would offer to give people testers, and therefore the conversation would start in the treatment room, and then we'd move it through into the front space once they were then checking out. And then it would be over to then the receptionist or the therapist, depending on who's checking them out. So you're like, come on, get back to tech, Harriet. So we're going to go back to tech. So once we've got then our understanding of what it is that they need for the day, where we fit our products and services, and then how we position it. If they take a tester, we then revisit back. We might send a quick text message, or if they're coming back in 4 weeks, we will then see how they've got on since then. When we apply this then back into technology, we're looking at ways and means to do a similar process. So when we look at our day, if we look at our opportunities and we're looking at our calendar, then within our own notes, we want to make sure that what is the goal for that meeting. So if I've managed to secure, let's say it's a first meeting or a discovery opportunity, the notes in my CRM would then be discovery meeting confirmed with this person, key things to understand, because at that moment when I've booked it, I've already thought about why, what call to action did I use, what industry insights did I share, did they share anything on their response? And then from the research I've done, 2 or 3 dot points. We don't want to do too much research because it stops us from asking questions. Okay. I would rather you go in there with just a real short overview in terms of who they are and what they do, depending on what you're selling, so that then you can get them to ask more. Because sometimes if we assume too much, we don't ask the questions and therefore we don't understand. So when we've understood and we've got our notes, we then prepare for our meeting. We've got our structure, we go in, and then our goal at the end of it is, we've got a webinar coming up next week. Would you like to join? We're just putting the finishing touches to an ebook, a white paper, a case study. Are you happy if I share those? It would be awesome to tailor a demonstration for you. Would you be happy that to be our next steps? So all of the same principles apply in terms of what's the goal? What do we know about them? What have they already shared? What have we learned about them from other partners or people within the industry that are sharing intel? and how can we bring those together? Now, once we've done that, then our next steps will reflect that conversation. We then move them into the next meeting. We secure it. At that moment, we confirm it via email, recap on what we've discussed, and then we secure our next meeting, whether it be a demonstration online or in person. And so when we do that, that means we're taking our notes, we're recapping, or we're moving them forward. If at that point they don't move forward, or if at any point during that journey they stop and they say, look, we're not quite ready for this, we've decided to go into a different direction, we've now got all of our notes so that when we come back in 3 months' time to add value, to understand how they went with onboarding with the other company, with where this has landed if there's been a pause, and we reignite them using the information that they've given us. And so when we look back at the salon element, is that we're using what we know about them, their skin, their hair, their goals, and we relate it back to the services and how often they should come in. When we look at the sales element in technology, we're understanding their pain points, their challenges, their goals, how they want to get there, how they think they're going to get there. And then we provide products or services to do that. If we're not able to get them in just yet, we have the ability to circle back within a period of time. My recommendation is always 3 months, always 3 months of at a minimum. So ideally we want to do, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, whatever it is. But if they've said no, or if there's a reason why, and let's say they're in a 12-month, 18-month contract, every 3 months would just be a reminder for think of them, do something, share something. What else do you know? What do you know today that you didn't know 3 months ago? Okay. And so that will allow us to really build it through. And essentially, we're looking at businesses in the same way, whether it's beauty, whether it's tech, there's so many commonalities between the two, but it's about having the right strategy, the right structure, the right process to take your customer on a journey and use what they tell us, use what they've taken, use what they've purchased to understand them more, to get them stickier, to get them coming back, to get them to be adding on more products, services, treatments. Same thing in technology. The goal is that we work with them once and then we expand on the offering if we believe it's right. We're only ever selling something if we believe it's right. We're only ever suggesting something if we believe it's right. And so this episode has been all about how we bridge the gap between tech and salons. I've shared about my wins, my losses, crying at a loss, but actually how we're able to get it back. And so I hope it's giving you some ideas and some thought bubbles around how you can structure your day. And if you are familiar with any other industries, or if you're engaging in other industries as a consumer, think about things that have worked for you, because just because they're small doesn't mean it's not going to work for you as a large organization or as an enterprise organization, because we can learn from different areas. And for me, that's why I love sitting where I do. I work with small, medium, large enterprise. I work with different size teams, and we're constantly cross-referencing what works here, and we bring it together. And so that for me is a unique position that I'm in, and something that I love to see and love to be involved in. And although, yes, we specialize in tech, we do get pulled into many opportunities around beauty, around salons, and totally different industries that some of them I didn't even know that they existed. I remember learning about blockchain, and that was a whole different ballgame. That really tested my learning framework, but we still were able to do it. So take from it what you feel like you're lacking, or what you feel like you'd like to try something new of. As always, let me know, connect with me over on LinkedIn. I would love for you to share or leave a review if you enjoyed this episode, as it helps us to reach further. It helps us to have an impact beyond those that are just listening today, or that are finding us through different channels or people. It helps more than you know. And so thank you so much for being here. I'm Harriet Mellor. This is the Sell Like You podcast. Happy selling.